Now, after 3 weeks of waiting, Ghana's 2024 budget has finally been given the approval. This was not without drama, as the approval had to go through a torturous head count of members of parliament present. At the end of the day, the majority carried the day, with 138 votes against the 136 of the minority, with the one MP being reported absent. We shall explore the politics later on, but for now, I sure should be joined by the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Anta, for a conversation on this. I mean, this is perhaps government's biggest news this week, because there's been a lot of conversation about what's happening with the budget there. If you're able to get Mr. Amin Anta on the line, that should be done for the conversation to proceed. Honorable, you're welcome to Upfront. Well, I'm not so sure that I still have him on. That certainly should be fixed. Yes, Honorable, very good evening to you. I hope you are doing well this evening. You're welcome to Upfront.
Thank you. I'm doing great. And how are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am grateful for your time this evening. Government is obviously elated by the approval of the policy principles of this 2024 budget. But how relevant was this to our recovery process?
Well, I think that the last time Parliament considered this approval of the budget, the Ministry of Finance had taken a view that it was approved unless otherwise overturned. And we knew that a procedure for head count of members of Parliament had come to an abrupt end, and we were hoping that this matter would be resolved. And so today, it has been resolved. The head count had been taken, and then the ayes had it. But the significance to our recovery is that one of the prior actions that we have to meet for the IMF to disburse the next tranche of $600 million, and for the World Bank to also disburse $300 million, for Africa Development Bank to disburse up to $100 million. You talk about $1 billion. We were required to submit a budget to Parliament with a projected primary balance of a surplus of 0.5% of GDP. And so the submission of the budget to Parliament with this fiscal path is what we were required to do under the fund program, for them to disburse, for us to spend in various aspects of our economy. It was not conditioned on the approval. But once the approval has been done, it paves way for us to now look at the estimates for the various MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, and eventually end with the Appropriation Act. The Appropriation Act, which will then give government the mandate to spend. In this 2024 budget, we are projecting to spend about 226 billion Ghana cedis. And so until the Appropriation Act is passed by Parliament, we will not be able to spend. So this approval, in my view, is procedural. And this is why, if you were in Parliament today, a number of submissions were made to the effect that it is not necessary for Parliament to be voting on the principles of the budget. What Parliament should be doing is to vote on the estimates for the various MDAs and eventually the Appropriation Act. And therefore the Speaker indicated the Parliament was going to look at the standard orders with the view to streamlining the process so that we don't, hijack the process that would lead to the Appropriation Act being passed in order for us to have smooth processes of approving our budget.
This is interesting. Now, the crux of what I heard you say is it paves way for us to get a certain billion dollars from various institutions, including the 600 million from the IMF's deal. When are we likely to get these amount of monies? Would we have to wait for the appropriations bill to be passed first?
No, I mean, as I indicated, what we needed to do was just the submission of the budget, because the IMF also knows that this is a process that goes through Parliament, and government doesn't have control over what Parliament does. And so we needed to just submit the budget, which we did. And so we qualified, under the conditions of the fund. And so it was not conditioned on approval, before the fund will disburse. But I'm saying also that once the approval is done, it provides certainty to everybody, that the principles of the budget have been accepted, and therefore paves the way for Parliament to now consider the estimate for the various ministries, departments, and agencies, and eventually end up with the passing of the Appropriation Act, which then gives government the mandate to start spending for the 2024 budget.
Perhaps related, though, is the amount of money you mentioned. When are we getting the IMF money, the 600 million?
Oh, the IMF is expected to go to the board, and it's the board approval that is essential, very critical for the disbursement to be made. And so the date for the board meeting, when it's set, will be communicated to us, and I believe we will also inform the people of Ghana. Has
there been a delay, and is this potential delay from we and our role that we were supposed to play?
No, there certainly has been a delay. I mean, if you recall, we had mentioned some time ago, particularly when the IMF team came into Ghana for us to negotiate the staff-level agreement, which eventually was successful. The indication at that time was that by the end of November, there should be disbursement. There certainly has been a little delay, but it is not attributed to the role of Ghana. Ghana has played our role very well. The government has done what it's supposed to do. The Ministry of Finance, under the leadership of the Honorable Minister, Ken Oforiatta, has done what we are supposed to do. What is outstanding is for our creditors, our official creditors, to also make a certain decision, which I believe they will make sooner in order for us to tick all the boxes. And then the IMF will have a board meeting after which the disbursement of the funds will be done.
Are there any deadlines on when these creditors will make their decisions?
Well, there is no deadline. I mean, as I told you, we don't have control over the creditors, but discussions have been very positive and very encouraging. And we are confident that they will make a decision sooner.
Would it be before the end of the year?
Hopefully, yes.
Now, there's another point I want to raise with you. What concession did you have to make for this to go through, or you didn't make any concessions at all? The minority had raised concerns about new taxes you wanted to impose on the people, and they have submitted other bills in tandem with that, and also issues to do with the exemptions regime and the kind of monies you were basically letting go of companies, about 45 of them, they released a list on. And finally, they even had difficulties with some of the things we thought were good deals within the budget, which you had given as a cushioning for industry, right from the electric vehicles industry to other ends. Did you as a government have to make any concessions at this level for this final vote to happen?
Well, I don't know what concession you are talking about. When you present a budget, it's for Parliament to debate and to approve. The budget will have revenue, and then it will have expenditure side. The revenue, I believe, is what you are talking about, the revenue side. The measures that have to do with the changes to some of the tax laws, because government is granting a number of tax relief to industry and other businesses, and even to workers. And also, we are seeking to expand the tax net for some tax arms. And so these have to be considered through tax bills. And the tax bills, including the exemptions bill that you mentioned, have been laid. All of them have been laid in Parliament. And Parliament will have the opportunity to consider these bills. And so I don't know what concessions you're asking for, but as far as we are concerned, we've presented a very good budget. The tax reliefs are going to benefit the people of Ghana. I believe that our colleagues on the minority side are also speaking for the people of Ghana, and to the extent that such tax relief will go along to support economic growth and also reduce hardships on the people as well as businesses. I don't expect the minority to kick against these revenue measures.
It's interesting. I mean, I saw the post from the minority who says that government indeed has an insatiable appetite for taxes. The government is imposing 20% tax on Akpeteshi. They have run out of ideas, it says. Petrol and diesel vehicle owners should also expect to pay a new annual tax of 100 cedi per vehicle on all of these petrol and diesel cars. The tax will be imposed on trotros, aboboyas, taxis, and the rest. According to government, this policy is aimed at promoting the use of cleaner, a more eco-friendly source of energy. I mean, is this really true? Have you put such a bill before Parliament?
Well, I'm not sure if that is correct, because what this budget is seeking to do is not to introduce new taxes. The only new thing I see has to do with the emissions tax. And you know that the government has a responsibility to ensure that we have environmental sustainability, our environment is clean, we are all moving towards net zero, and we must all make efforts to ensure that we move towards that. Otherwise, all the others that they're talking about, they are existing taxes, okay, and government is seeking to just expand the tax net, okay, and so I'm not sure what they are saying is true. But we all have the opportunity to examine the tax bills, the content of the tax bills, and to debate them appropriately.
Now, we are getting to the end of the year. I mean, should people expect a very wonderful Christmas because of the budget and the principles being passed? Is next year promising a prosperous year for many Ghanaians?
Well, this budget is a very promising budget. Apart from the fact that we are launching a new growth strategy through this budget that will see us spending heavily on agriculture, on tourism, on industry, on digitalization, and the jobs that will be created as a result of this, will all go a long way to support our development efforts and to grow our economy. Don't forget that this year we are already growing beyond what we anticipated. We were expected to grow at 1.5. We are doing 3.2. Okay, and so we want to build on this to be able to grow the economy at accelerated pace next year. And also, social interventions are receiving so much attention in this 2024 budget. The LEAP is being doubled in this budget. LEAP is for the livelihood empowerment against poverty. School feeding program is being doubled. Capitation grant is being doubled. National health insurance is given more money than they ever received from the government. These social interventions are particularly targeted because we know that for most of the countries that have run IMF program, including Ghana, they are usually associated with austerity measures that imposes hardships on the people. And therefore, this time, we have been intentional about negotiating increase in spending for the most vulnerable segments of our society. And this is what this budget is supposed to do, to cushion our people and to ensure that we support them to be active participants in the growth process.
Free SHS will not be in any way affected. Funding for free SHS will not be anywhere affected.
No, it will not. I mean, it's a top priority of government. And we see it as the most socially significant, very important program for our people. Because as far as we are concerned, it supports the redistribution of our income, of our wealth, And therefore, government will continue to do anything that we can to get the resources to continue to provide free senior high school program for our people.
I am grateful to you for your time this evening, the Honorable Minister of State, and for the explanation on these matters. I am grateful, sir.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity.
Mohammed Amin Anta is the Minister of State responsible for finance, and in that ministry he was in Parliament speaking a while ago. And as I've been telling you, the budget for 2024, the policy principles have actually been passed. This does not mean the appropriation bill has also been passed. What happens is that on the last day that Parliament rises, they actually have to finally deal with the appropriations bill. And mostly they end up taking every sector of the budget and pass it according to sectoral allocations and all the other difficulties, whether they want it to increase or reduce or whichever way they want it actually will be debated in that Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. But this has been a monumental step because in the last 3 weeks, we've been trying to get this done since the budget was finally read. The minister has been appearing in Parliament. The last time, there was a big debate over whether or not they could do a head count. That head count happened today, and 138 people on the side of the majority were able to push through, with the minority having 136. A member of that minority, 136, is joining us now. He speaks for them. He's the Sanarigu MP, Alhaji A.B.A. Puseni. Honorable, you're welcome to Upfront.
Good evening, Raymond, and good evening to your viewers.
You lost out today. You were not fully represented. There was a member of your team that was missing. Why?
Oh, Raymond, I'm sure that we are near full representation. I'm sure that the only member of ours is unavoidably out of the jurisdiction on account of his health situation. So I'm sure that you know what Honorable Jachi Kwesi has gone through. This government, very vindictive as it is, has not given him even any briefing space. Ever since he became member of parliament, he was harassed, persecuted, prosecuted, ran over, so many things, just to get rid of him. But for his still resistance, I mean, our brother, you have even broken down long ago. And so I'm sure currently he's just having a little bit of a challenge, and I'm sure that you'll get over it very soon. That is the only person. Otherwise, the mandate that the good people of this country gave us, the numbers that they gave us, we delivered. The NDC delivered fully the numbers that they gave us. And so I can say without any out of that the NDC group and the leadership of our caucus deserve commendation for standing up and fighting all the way. Raymond, this hopelessly uninspiring budget that the finance minister has brought is like a nail in the coffin of Ghanaians. It is going to make life. Already look at the excruciating hardships and misery Ghanaians are going through. And then they are going to endure this again for another year under a hopelessly uninspiring budget that does not offer a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Nothing. And so Raymond, you coming together to bring all the 136 members of parliament to vote against this budget is a signal to Ghanaians that we fall in their defense and will not allow this government to ride roughshod over them. And I can tell you that this is not the end of the process. We still have we still have an appropriation bill to pass. That's what will come again. And that means that you will have to stay alert to have all their numbers. And you can't guarantee it happen tomorrow. So we are indicating that as long as there's obnoxious taxes. And remember, this particular budget is bringing more than 16 other taxes, these taxes, a lot of which will culminate in further executive of our country. In fact, this budget are earmarked to bring in more than 11 billion Ghana in new taxes. Raymond, this is a government that is bringing in exemptions alone, Raymond, which is about 12.7 billion Ghana. A lot of these exemptions, when you examine them, are for their friends, family, concubines, whatever you can say. Okay? So we are saying that people have just even rolled back on these exemptions and give the people a footing. Many Ghanaians were looking for it in this budget to the reduction of taxes, not the increase in taxes. Because this government itself, as so, indicated they They are moving the country from taxation to production. And every budget cycle, Raymond, we are having more and more taxes being filed on Ghana. In fact, Ghana has the most extortionate tax in the West African community. And yet, we are not satisfied. We are adding more taxes. So clearly, we cannot find a way to support the institution of additional hardship on our already overburdened people. We cannot give up. And we spoke very loud on this on the floor. And so Ghanaians are the living witnesses to what's going on.
Now, it's pretty interesting how you put this, but you couldn't convince your colleagues on the other side to vote against these principles of the budget if it was this bad.
I'm sorry you even saw when Mr. Speaker wanted to say that let everybody get up and on his own say yes or no. They yes, it. In fact, the leadership of the NPP, the front bench, said that no, that we are supposed to even boycott the sitting again and throw them somewhere. They said that no, Mr. Speaker has said that anybody who just gets up on their side has said it. Because some what individual members will get up and say no, one of them could have said no, I will do against the budget. They were scared to them to allow their under many jurisdictions. You allow people and vote in their own way. Raymond, is it good to hear from me whether I would have get the budget or not? I ask you, and let's just say it so that it's so that I step this way or that way. But there was, and so they got the 3 lines where they make it compulsory for everybody to just say that whether you have a question to put against the budget or for, you are for it, whether you like it or not, you are for it. I mean, what kind of democracy is it? It's a charade. You should have allowed individual members, when Mr. Speaker made them to call their names, to get up and indicate which way they wanted to go. Unfortunately, we just had that kangaroo process where everybody, if you were on the NPP side, you got automatically, whether you wanted it or not, you had to vote. You say that your vote was sitting at yes. That is not that is. And it's a matter like this, where even our constituents are looking at us to protect their interests. Raymond, in this budget, for instance, Association of Ghana Industries, GUTA, Izan Farmer, all manner of organizations came out to make that appeal to this government that their lives were threatened. Many people were dying. The amount of unemployed was swelling. The businesses are, and so they're looking for the tax establishment. Instead of even at West, where they are, you are passing more taxes on them. Many more businesses are going to collect Raymond. The length of the unemployment is only at the highest level in our country's history, and that is hopelessly incompetent. It's going to get that. So, what's there in this budget for the good people of this country? A budget that isn't projected to make the debt system work. Raymond, they are projected to get a revenue of 176 billion. They are spending 224 billion. Another budget deficit of over 50 billion. How are they doing that? As we speak now, the head, in fact, no, in some instances, they have cut off people. It's no longer in the head. It's a head cut. And people have had collapse that there's a loss of confidence in the banking system. Now people are interested in put their money in the bank again because of what the banks today themselves are suffering huge loss. And so the whole economy is in turmoil. Raymond. And so how would any person of Christians support this budget as it is? We are people of Christians. We are representatives of the people. The people sent us to come and protect their interests, not to come and play partisan football. So what they have done is a great disservice to the people of this country.
Okay.
And I want no doubt in my mind that the good people of this country will punish the NPP heavily in the elections.
Now, my question, forgive me, Honorable APA President, forgive me, I need to interrupt now. Sorry, I need to intervene. And I was trying to say that my question is to find out what's your next move. You could not arrest the budget at this stage. Indeed, many have even argued that policy principles are not really a big deal to debate and fight on. What next for the minority in Ghana's parliament?
There are many processes to unfold. We are now going to the committee level to deal with estimates. Okay? So another debate will be coming on the very soon regarding the estimates of the budget. And even at the committee level, it may be vote. And so some committees may even return a negative vote to the floor for the plenary to decide. And just that, like I said at the end, after the estimate, and there has to be an appropriation bill that will be taken. That may require another vote. And to get in a resolution, they need more than the numbers that they have. So we are here how in this very anti-community portal they can get the document. So Raymond, this by no means over. The struggle to reach people of and hard taxes considered by this government is by no means over. We are just transiting into another phase where that will assume another dimension. And we do not rest here. We bring to our people who deeply deserve that relief. Government should also look and cut on the frivolous, those obnoxious items that impose unnecessary cost on our people. They must look at gargantuan spending on things that don't benefit the productivity, the economy, and others. Must be taken. And so with that problem, government must indicate that we are in austerity. And so they must live for fear life. The kind of thing where this president is carrying at 2,000 feet, presidential of over $30,000. All those kind of frivolous expenditures must be taken place. They must visit the regime something that they are giving to their friends, family members, and cronies, and those things, so that they can give the relief to the people of this country. They can give relief to the industry to perform. Today, Ghana is the most costly place to do business in the West African region. When we have a competitive advantage, not so long ago, John Dramani Mahama.
Okay, let me be quite clear. What's the basis of your claim that this is a costless place to do business in the sub-region? What's the source of it, Honorable A.B. Hussaini?
You read matters of trade in the West African region. I'm not sure if this government can do that. We have come to accept that we are the most costly in terms of the business. I don't think they dispute it.
No, I'm asking you for street proof. I'm asking you for evidence to back it. As in evidence in a report issued by a relevant institution. Is that what you're referencing?
In the IMF data, go and read it. We are talking as one of the most costly to do business. In addition to the huge debt overseas that we have, that makes investment in our district unattractive. Because you cannot repay. For the first time in the history of our country, we had to reduce in the solution of our debt. The first time in the history of our country, we can spend our economy unattractive. So nobody puts his money into an economy when they even invest. Even sometimes their profit becomes a problem. They cannot invest when it's time to take their money. You give them a haircut of 40%. Today, Raymond, we are stuck because the official credit committee are saying that the 40% crude haircut that they force down the throats of banks in Ghana and establishment, they will not take it. And so that's why we start. We cannot get the second tranche of the IMF base of 600 million. We are in serious trouble. And so that is what's happening. The finance minister does not want to come clean on this matter. But this is what we have sunk to. We have sunk to the lowest of the low. And so there's no light at the channel. We are in a very sorry mess created by President Raymond Acquah and Dr. Bawumia, chairman of the Economic Management Team. They have been a hopeless, miserable, catastrophic failure. Those who tapped their economic potential and competence today have run down the economy and have put the lives of Ghanaians in the most sorry state ever that you can imagine. And Ghanaians, I'm sure, will pass that vet from them in the 2024 elections by the grace of Allah Almighty and bring back the President Mahama to assume the reins of and correct the mess.
We should do a more expansive conversation on this in the future. But for now, I'm very grateful to you for your time. The Honorable ABA Fuseni, the Sanarigu MP, on this particular development in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront. And when we return from this break, we should be able to expand the conversation. There is also another happening that really give people some understanding of what's happening in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. That's to do with the suspension of the legislative instrument, which is seeking, among other things, to impose restrictions on some imports. We call it selected strategic imports. Those products, about 24 or so, that particular airline was suspended earlier today too. We'll be speaking to the people who were on this matter, interested in it, and were pushing for either its approval or suspension on what they feel about the decision taken so far. Of course, after the break. Hello, good evening, welcome back to Upfront. And the conversation we're having is what's been happening in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, where Budget 2024, in fairness, the policy principles of the budget has been passed, approved by the Parliament today. This after 3 good weeks of trying to get around the difficulties of how to vote it or how to approve the voting that was earlier done. In this conversation, the first person who gave us details of what we should expect going into the new year, what this means for us, is the Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, the Honorable Dr. Mohammed Amin Anta. He was followed in that conversation by the Member of Parliament for Sanarigu and also the spokesperson for the minority in Ghana's Parliament, the Honorable ABA Fuseni. Now, we'll be switching up a little bit because unless we're able to speak to Professor Lord Mensah, we should be able to get to appreciate the other happening in the Parliament of Ghana. That's related to why we have suspended the legislative instrument on the restrictions we are seeking to impose on some 24 different selected, as government calls it, strategic products. These 24 projects became a bit of a controversy in the Republic of Ghana. Some were heavily kicking against that. One of those who had raised red flags about that airline is the Food and Beverages Association. Its executive chairman is joining us on Upfront now. John Awuni, you are welcome to Upfront.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Raymond, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
You obviously will be elated by the latest development on this particular front, but are you likely to win the battle now and lose the war in the future?
Well, Raymond, let me say not elated because I took upon this fight for the common man, for the Ghanaian, for the voter, for the grassroots person, for the person who struggles to get even a meal a day. This is the fight that I took for. And I kept on in my arguments talking about the fact that self-sufficiency is good, but the country has not prepared itself. They say coming events cast their shadows. And so we never saw this thing coming. The rice sector is very weak. The poultry sector is weak. The fish sector is weak. Almost all the sectors are not doing well. So you cannot come out with an LI suddenly seeking to restrict imports when you have not prepared your local industry. Even in the 2024 budget, you find out that even the government has contradicted itself in that particular budget, where they came out with tax on carbon emissions and vehicles, 100 cedis per ton for a carbon emission. If you are seeking to boost patronage of locally produced food or manufacture of locally produced food, how can you come out with such a regressive tax on those manufacturers? And almost all the local manufacturing firms fall into that category.
Yes, and I get your introductory remarks. Let me also bring into this conversation Professor Lord Mensah, who's at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, you're welcome to Upfront. Yes, I may seek your thoughts on this restriction, but if it pleases you, Prof, would it be okay if I take you back to what's happened in Parliament today? The Minister of State at the Finance Ministry is very happy that this is a good sign He says presenting a budget to Parliament was one of the prerequisites for the engagement they're supposed to have. Indeed, they were expecting over $1 billion from 3 different institutions, which included the World Bank, the IMF, 600 million that we're talking about, and some other institution giving us an extra 150 or so million in addition to this. And he believes that this will go a long way in aiding that process. Good news, isn't it?
Yes. Let me put it this way. There's no money that comes without conditions. And we should appreciate that IMF, World Bank, all those supporting agencies to our budget can only give you money when they know very well that the money is going to serve the purpose it was meant for. As we speak now, the country is distressed. In fact, we are dire in need of foreign, currency. We need dollars. Remember, Ghana is an import-driven economy. And as a result of that, IMF, World Bank, and all those agencies will not give you grant and support when they know very well that once you get an inflow, you'll be tempted to direct it to pay your external debt. So they are expecting us to finish, negotiations on our external debt. The budget is, an annual constitutional mandate. And so we shouldn't be so happy and speak English around it and present it as if we've done something extraordinary to attract funding into this country. Clearly, we need to do more. And what we have to do is to make sure that we finish our external, credit, negotiations. And by so doing, these supporting agencies will be sure of the purpose that, their monies are meant for, will be doing that job. Other than that, if you are not able to finish, this external, creditor negotiations and your balance of payment goes down and you are receiving money from, World Bank and all those, you should know that, we will be using that to service our debt. And by so doing, the money will more or less be diverted. So these monies are coming with conditions. It's not a straightforward thing. And they are tied to the 600 million IMF money. Until we get that 600 million, which the 600 million is also tied to us finishing our negotiations with, our external creditors and resuming our debt based on the outcome of the restructuring that we'll have with our external creditors. So they are conditional support. They not support condition on only just reading budget, to parliamentarians, as we do every now and then.
There's an interesting point, though. The minister is very convinced or very hopeful that by the end of the year, we should be getting the money from the IMF. And these external conversations should be done early enough. And those creditors will come to a conclusion on what they are doing with Ghana on that particular plate. Are you equally hopeful that this timeline or perceived period for engagement will be met one way or the other, i.e., are we getting 600 million before the end of the year?
You see, Raymond, let me tell you that the current finance minister has been overly optimistic in his dealings as far as the economic management is concerned. He's always banking on hope and hope and hope every now and then, which the realization of those hopes has been a problem. From where I sit, we have a long way to go, in our negotiations with external creditors. It's not a straightforward thing, and especially when you look at the diversity of our external creditor formation, it's not one jacket fits all, like what we did in the local market, where the minister got up and announced, debt restructuring without looking at the other parties involved. Here you owe, France, you owe China, you owe, a whole avalanche of, bilateral, debt. And then also talking about, what do we call it, commercial debt from the Eurobond market, which are people's, pensions and people's, investment. So we're not going to get it straight like that. But our finance minister has been overly optimistic. And this optimism, seem to reflect in his budget numbers as well. I mean, if you look at, the expenditure, dynamics over the years, every now and then we increase expenditure more than 30% of the previous year. And you ask yourself, where would the money be coming from? So I think it's the kind of finance minister we have, and then his economic, management strategy. And that is even what has landed us into this economic mess that we find ourselves in.
Now, one more thing, though. You said this might sound overly optimistic at that level, but we need the money. How would the new year 2024 be like without the kind of support that we expect in this space? We know where exchange rate is heading. We know where inflation is actually currently hovering. And our projections for inflation and perhaps for exchange rate too. Will we be able to survive without the estimated 1 billion or so coming from first the IMF and the World Bank bringing us 300 million and the other amounts coming on board?
You see, let me tell you something. The first 600 that we got from IMF was more or less, kind of a sympathy release, because the economy, at that point, a situation where you have your balance of payment has squeezed to a point of, 1 week, coverage. Obviously, you'll be in a dire situation. And so it was kind of a consideration that made us get the 600 million. But to unlock the second, tranche, which is the 600 million we are expecting, it's basically, centered on how we finish our negotiations with our external creditors. But you see, if these monies don't come, then probably we may have to call for an emergency budget review, because the numbers that we see in the budget, we cannot go on that trajectory without, those inflows. So it will have a dire consequence on our exchange rate, because the little that we have is what we have to use for our foreign transactions. And then also inflation likely to stay high. Government still remain within, that 1 year threshold of, borrowing. We're talking about treasury bill market. And so interest rates not really, going to come down within those periods. And also taking into consideration, the election year overspending, there's a likelihood that the government can muscle, the Bank of Ghana to print, money as they did in 2022. So these are all things that we should expect.
Now, Prof, I'm grateful to you for your time this evening, and forgive me for taking you out of a very busy schedule to share some thoughts with us. Now, let me bring in the gentleman who is the executive chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, reverting to that conversation about the suspension of the legislative instrument, which was seeking, among other things, to impose restrictions on some 24 selected and strategic products, including about 8 of them being food products. Now, Mr. Wuni, finally, is it because, and I've heard the Minister of Information say, this is to allow for greater engagement with you, parties and partners, and also those of you who are industry players? I recall that you've had an engagement with the ministry before, as in the Ministry of Trade or the committee in Parliament. Yes, I think the committee in Parliament. What was the outcome of that engagement, and is there more engagements expected?
We had engagement with the Ministry of Trade, but we had engagement after our petition to Parliament with the Parliamentary Staff Committee on the Legislative Committee. It was chaired by Honorable Dominic Ayene, and that we had 2 days ago. And the conclusion is that on both sides means that both NDC and NPP MPs who were present in that meeting all agreed that the council was not ready for such LI, and because we lacked the capacity, the data was not even correct, we didn't have accurate data, and then all that. But in principle, we all agreed. That is the NDC, the MPP, and then the stakeholders involved. We all agreed that it was a good policy. It was a good thing to encourage local production, but not by way of LI. And we had various options that we could pursue to do that. And in a span of 5 to 10 years, consistently, irrespective of the government in power, we could do something like that. So the conclusion was that it should not be. They will advise Parliament not to. The subcommittee will advise Parliament not to lay it.
Perhaps, do you think that that's in any way connected to why this suspension indeed happened? Are there further plans to engage you? You said your engagement was with the parliamentary committee. Parliament, are there further plans by Parliament and the ministry, as in the Trade and Industry Ministry, to engage you?
The ministry sent us an invitation that they were going to have a meeting with us. That is yesterday. But the day before that, in the night, they sent a notice again that they had cancelled the meeting. And so we don't know what the plans of the ministry is moving forward.
Oh, well, that's an interesting development. Well, I guess that's some clarity we should be having on this. My very final question to you is, where do we go from here? This has been a thorny issue. It's been a back and forth on this one. If you're asked to tell government what else it should do in this quest to ensure import substitution industrialization, which has been a long-term goal of this country, what should we do? Small, basic, strategic, realistic steps.
Design good policies like manufacturing firms that come in as packaging firms and yet they consider themselves as manufacturing firms. Largely, members of the AGI are just packaging firms that they also call themselves manufacturers. Because if we take those who manufacture, who say they manufacture tomato in this country, they don't buy the tomato from our farmers. They import tomato puree. If we take those who import, who manufacture fruit juices, they don't buy the pineapple, the oranges, and all those fruits from the farmers. They import the concentrate, and even the pharmaceutical and all that. Most of them. So it appears that we just set up.
Well, I seem to be losing you there. If Mr. Woody could conclude that point for me. Okay, well,
they can a certain percentage of their marketing locally produced goods. Then we have to finally work at the cost of the local item. Local chicken is, but the cost is very, very high. Local rice is good, but the cost is very high. So efficiency in our production, cost per unit, can be the key to our breakthrough. Because as you enter into the market, you must enter with a very reasonable pricing mechanism. And as it is now, the local market, local products will have the competitive edge over the imported ones. Even though we have heavy taxes on the imported ones, we are not producing efficiently. And then the taxes must be removed, because look at the carbon tax which Ministry of Finance has slapped on the industry. Come 2024, prices of inputs up, cost of production go up. One particular, the input prices will go up because the input side also be affected by that. So it's a whole lot of things that we can do. We can do as a country over a 10-year period, but not just overnight.
Now, I am grateful to you for your time this evening, and many thanks to you for joining us. And many thanks also to you, Professor Lord Mensah, for your wonderful and insightful commentary on this particular engagement. Same to you, the honorable members of Parliament, and yes, for Sagnarigo, that is Alhaji A.B.A. Fuseni, and also the honorable Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Mohammed Amin Anta, for all your time this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we tie the nice ribbons on today's edition of Upfront. My name is Raymond Acquah.